Hey, everybody, it's Colin. Welcome to the first edition of Colin's Backstage Pass. We're going to bring this to you every couple of weeks, and I'm going to bring some venue owners, some bands, some notable music folks from here in the Lake Norman and Charlotte area. And I am so excited to introduce my first two guests of my first episode. I'm so grateful. Chris Bakitis and Clint Robbins. Uh, Chris Bakitis, if you don't know, has been around for 100 years in the Charlotte area. I've known Chris for probably 20 plus years from the days of the Comedy Zone and Galway Hooker. But Chris is the owner of Boatyard Eats. It's Boatyard now here in Cornelius at the lake. And Clint Robbins is with East Coast Entertainment, and he is responsible for all the amazing bands that show up week after week. And I'm so grateful to have you both. Guys, how you doing? Welcome.
Congratulations on this.
Thank you.
Colin.
Well, we're going to get to this first
You
one.
you bring us two first, and you want to have continuation of this?
Well, we'll see how it goes. The good news is I can cut and splice this in any way I need to, right? So I'll only use what we like. But anyway,
Let's get your in.
this is really exciting. I appreciate you both being here. As you both know, live music at the lake has been kind of the core of what makes us tick here for many years. Venues, that have been around for years that aren't here anymore. And you guys really have made Boatyard I would say the pinnacle of live music here at the lake. So I think a lot of folks come because it's awesome and because they love the bands and they love the venue. But I want to give them kind of a peek behind the curtain, hence the backstage piece of this. So I've got a bunch of things I want to cover with you both. And I know we've only got 30 minutes, so we'll jump right in. Chris, I'm going to start with you. You've got a handful of businesses up here at the lake. Boatyard was around when you obviously decided to jump in. Tell us why you decided to get involved with the Boatyard.
Because the third person on this screen came to me and said, I have a great idea. It really, from the early days of Lake Norman, there's always been some type of music scene. If you think about it early on with the Double Door to Midtown, there's always been a need and a want for live music. And when I moved up here, I think it was 23 years ago, even the early days of the Brick House Tavern, we toyed around with doing some music, even inside a restaurant. Then moving over to the Galway Hooker, we had a music scene of some sort, right? You take the Irish pub, you throw some live music in there, and every time we did live music, the crowds just came in droves to support the cause. That led us to doing bigger things on the outside of the Galway Hooker with the St. Patty's Day festivals and some of the other concerts that we did outside. And we had a huge response. And there was not really any place to go that had the ability to accommodate more than just a few people. Double Door had closed down. COVID had now entered the scene. And just before all of that happened, Boatyard opened up and they came into the marketplace. And I think between myself and a few others in the community, we were almost like, darn, I wish we would have done that because the market needs it desperately. And then when Boatyard opened, COVID hit. Mr. Robbins here came knocking at the door at the Galway Hooker because he was there from the very beginning with Boatyard saying, and there's an opportunity. The current ownership is going to be migrating away, looking for a new partner involved. And much to the chagrin of my wife, she said, don't take that appointment. Don't go do that. Where we are, Clint, 4 years later?
Yep.
4 years later, the Boatyard Lake Norman is thriving, providing incredible entertainment for 1,000 people a night on the weekends, and we got a long way to go. So Boatyard is literally, I think, at its inception phase of what it's going to be over the next generation.
Well, it's been an incredible ride just over these last few years, and the changes you both have made, just from the restaurant and the bar to the sound system. I mean, it's been an incredible ride to watch you guys do that. So, Clint, when you sat down and kind of thought through this, obviously you work with much bigger bands in your regular day job. What made you say, I want to focus on local music?
I probably can speak for Chris on this in the sense that we both love the community. We always want to see the community thrive with, live music. And quite honestly, neither one of us really need this. We have our full careers and we have our families and our lives, but I think we both do it just because we have such a passion for it. And that's primarily what got me into this industry, 35 years ago doing this. I just have a passion for live music. Never been a musician, never wanted to be a musician, never wanted to be on stage. I've always been happy being like Oz behind the curtain. That's been my life for 35 years, just being the man on the stage, off to the side, coordinating all of it. And I knew that when Boatyard was struggling there for a little bit with the old ownership, looking to move on and, pass the torch, I knew there was only one person to go to in this entire community. It had to be Chris. So it took several meetings to convince Chris to get in it, just because it is super time consuming. It's cumbersome. We love it. It's a passion, but every passion is going to be like that. It's going to be a lot of hard work. And, really the success of it isn't really financially for either one of us. I think the success is just walking in the back of the room and seeing a full house of our community there, enjoying a great live show. And that's why I do it. I just want to see my friends and our community have a great time seeing live music.
Fantastic. And so certainly, I think you both will remember, because you brought up COVID, if I'm not mistaken, because I was part of the decision on St. Patrick's Day of 2020. There was a big weekend planned, and COVID hits, and the governor shuts down every live music venue, every restaurant, every bar, every festival. You're running for many months that it was supposed to happen. So you take on this new endeavor, and literally, days, weeks later, they tell you to shut it down. How did you handle that?
I am an optimist by heart all the way through, and you can't control what's not within your realm. I had no control over any of that. Shutting down markets, closing down businesses. We believed in what Boatyard was from the very beginning. We knew what it could be. I felt strongly that COVID wasn't going to be here forever, right? It was scary as hell, but I knew there'd be a moment. And when that moment would arise, I literally felt the crowds. I felt what was going to happen with Boatyard long before. I think Clint and I would meet in there weekly. Nothing's open, nothing's happening. There's no cars on the streets. You're looking at this massive 1,000-person venue going, they're coming. Because when this thing turns, it's going to be a renaissance. It's going to be a renaissance of business, a renaissance of community, a renaissance of people just wanting to be together. And during those months when we were closed down, it allowed us to do some of the really cool projects that Boatyard's known for, from the drum sets that line the ceiling, from the artwork in the restrooms, from building the stage. If COVID didn't happen, I'm not sure Boatyard would have as much intrigue and creativeness to it, right? Like Clint said earlier, there's not an ounce of musical talent in my body, not even an ounce. But I love the arts. I love the arts more than anything. I think it's fascinating to watch somebody on a guitar or play drums, let alone sing. Then you put them on a stage in front of 500 people and you watch them turn on even that much more. I'm with Clint. I sit behind the scenes, I watch it, I'm fascinated by it. But when it all comes together in the community that you love and you care about and you live, it just works. There's nothing better in the world.
Absolutely. And so speaking of the music piece, I'm bringing up a lot of the history because I think folks need to understand what you both have been through to get Boatyard to where it is today. And also, right after the COVID reopening, there was obviously an outcry from the neighborhood that music was too loud. And I know you guys probably got text messages on a daily, weekly basis. And I know you work very closely with the town and Tracy, whose team does your sound. So Clint, what was that like when you had to really make some hard decisions when it comes to, how it's going to sound now? Because everybody wants to, take it to 10 or 11 because it sounds better when it's loud, but you got to control that. You got to control the bands. You got to control the sound company. What was that like?
That actually started, well before I went and met with Chris. That started when the Stockwells had the property, and we did a lot of the town meetings, and everybody's heart was in the right place. The community wanted the live music, but we also had to be smart about how we did it. And that was evolving into the point where we got to COVID. And then once COVID passed, Chris kind of took the reins of like dealing with the town and the community and how to best handle that. Ultimately, we came up with some decisions and plans based upon, how shows are selling, time of year. We want to be respectful of the community because the reason we do this is for the community. So just as there's people who want to see live music, there's also people that may not enjoy as much as we do, especially outside their house at 8:30 at night. So we try to be respectful of when we're doing these shows and how we do the shows and make it a good situation, not only for the band, but also for our neighbors. Their neighbors are super important to us. We wouldn't exist if it wasn't for them, because we need their support. And I think Chris has done an amazing job. It was an uphill battle for a long time, but I think we've, kind of worked out the kinks and have really dialed things in to run the venue as it should be. Not to mention, we've also invested a lot into the production, which does make a big difference. When you have, good production, it's like an old car radio. If you want it loud, you got to turn it really loud. It doesn't sound very good. You just want it to sound nice and full. We're not looking to blow anybody out. We're just looking for you to have a nice, warm energy outside. And, spending the extra money that we did for the production just made a huge difference in the last couple of years.
Can I chime in a little bit on
Yeah.
that too? Clint nailed it perfectly. From the very first time that somebody called and said, "Hey, it's loud," we worked with the police. We partnered with the local police department, buying the same decibel readers, the same scanners that read and report. So when anybody would talk about the loud noise, as police officers would come out to check it, we would work with them, walk the perimeters of the parking lot. When we moved outside for the first season, it was loud. The shows are outside. We reinforced the stage. We spent thousands upon thousands of dollars on reinforcing insulation, sound barriers underneath. We bought new speakers that were more high tech. We bought the line array speakers that created a better sound and a better wavelength to keep things more contained. We put sound fencing behind the stage. So we've continued to do things, and we continue to adapt around that as technology allows. We also have met with numerous citizens in the community that had different issues, brought them out, talked through it. It's going to be an ongoing situation, but that's fine. As long as we're all working towards a common goal. Boatyard was not intended to be a nuisance. Boatyard is intended to be a community place, the gathering spot, and a successful tax-paying business in a community that thrives around that, right? And we're entertainment. When Clint books amazing bands on stage, when we put together a wonderful venue, this is not just people in our local community. We're pulling from hundreds of miles away for some of these bands. That's people coming into our community, spending their money at other restaurants, at the hotels, at the gas stations. So I think it's a win-win across the board. So it's just going to have to be an ongoing thing with the sound, but we'll get to it.
And I agree 100%. And you certainly, full disclosure, I was a commissioner during some of that time. And there was a lot of folks that, weren't happy, but there was also a lot of folks that were in support of you guys. Another issue, which we won't spend a lot of time on, where there was word that, Boatyard was going away. And I think it showed that the community really loves you guys more than you probably realize. And I think that's important to have, especially here. We have the lake, we have access to Charlotte, but really at the end of the day, you guys have really brought something special to this part of Charlotte to say, hey, this is somewhere you could bring your family during the day. You could bring your friends from out of town. You could see some really amazing bands. And I think that's really, made you guys stand out. So, Chris, if you were to talk to somebody who's never been here, the 5 people in Charlotte that have never been to Boatyard, what would you say? What would you say to them that the Boatyard is today? How would you describe it?
It is a live music venue that is on the regional to national level, but built around the foundation of small community, where we personalize every aspect of the business, where you feel like you're in something much bigger than it actually is, not from space, but from creativeness and idea. But you get the personal feel like you're walking into someone's house. When you walk into Boatyard, you feel the soul the second you walk in. From the servers to the bartenders to the bands, the place just has that special vibe, and it grabs you and you become part of it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Clint, would you have a different answer?
No, I mean, I'm the guy that's always out on the weekends. I'm the guy that, might be sitting at a bar and having a drink, and there's a couple sitting next to me, and I go, "What are you guys doing tonight?" I'm sitting there with my wife and start talking to them. They're like, "Oh, we've heard of it. We've never been there before." I immediately text the general manager and say, "Hey, I got 2 for the guest list tonight." I like to try to spread the word, because I think although a lot of people have heard of it, they haven't attended a show there yet. You were still very young. Do you agree, Chris, in the community?
100%. Like I said, I think Boatyard is at its infancy stage of what it's going to be over the next couple of decades. I really do. We want to be here for a very long time. And version 2 of this podcast, Colin, will be a really fun conversation. You just got to give me a little time.
Okay. Happy to have you back. Absolutely. So Clint, I have a question for you as the guy that everybody, anyone who's in a band or manages a band or has anything to do with the band, you're the man that they have to come to and through, get into the boatyard. And I know your email list is, the email is probably full every day. You have millions of texts you never got to, because I know I'm probably one of them sometimes. What would you tell a band that hasn't played there yet, what you're looking for? What's important to you to make sure that you're bringing the right talent and performance to the boatyard?
I think marketing is the most important thing for our venue, to be able to market an artist. And although there's some really great local talent around here and within a few hundred miles of here, they haven't quite built themselves to the point where they're built, created a nice EPK. We need those materials to educate the public. And I have these meetings with Chris and the crew every Tuesday, and I remind them, we're not PNC. I'm not booking Keith Urban. I'm not booking, Sammy Hagar. We're booking cover bands, tribute bands, and small national acts. That's our wheelhouse right now, to write a nice ticket booking. And to educate your community, especially with cover bands, you have to have great promo. And that it all starts here. And I oftentimes when bands will reach out, hey, we want to play, and they'll send me cell phone video, I'll quickly grab some links of some bands that do play for us and send them some EPKs and say, here's what I need to be able to promote you in this venue. So that's kind of my number one rule of thumb. And no disrespect, but it's also kind of how I kind of weed out some of the acts, because when they see it, they hit me back pretty quickly and say, we understand, we'll work on it. So they quickly understand what it's going to take to be able to play that venue. Because when push comes to shove, we still have bills to pay. We have to do the numbers. We're not one of the local venues where there's no cover charge to get in and you throw up your sound system and the band kind of wings it on stage. We're like a rock and roll live music venue, like you said. And, I pride myself and I pride our venue and the way it's run to be very on point. And I have high expectations from the staff. Chris has high expectations from the staff, but we also have high expectations from the artists to be responsible, on time, and, support their own music and promote their own shows. So it's a two-way street with the artists.
Absolutely. And again, as somebody who's been on that other side, I hear you 100%, but go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and this probably would get cut out. But the reality is, when Clint books these bands, he is going after the best of breed, right? There's 100 tribute bands for any major band all over the country, right? From Aerosmith to any of them. You can name, there's 100 tribute bands. I watch Clint through his process, weed through dozens of these options, right? Some are, as the owner of the business, I'm like, oh my God, Clint, this band we can get for extremely cheap. But he goes, I will not do it because it's about the quality. And there's been conversation many times between all of us. You can go to Aerosmith at PNC or one of these arenas, and you can pay hundreds of dollars to see an older band, a younger band, where sit up in the bleachers, do whatever it is, and still have a great experience. Pay $30 for parking, $100 for your meal where you're going to go across the street, be all in the traffic till 1 o'clock in the morning. Or you can come to your local community venue. It's a tribute band, but the quality, if you close your eyes, is as good as what you're seeing in some of these big arenas. You've got a pennies on the dollar price point. You got great bar staff and great prices at the venue, and you're really close to your home, and you're not dealing with all of the dramas that are out there. We found ourselves in a certain wheelhouse, Colin, that you already see, right? And how I word that correctly is not the way I just said that, but we're a venue that provides value, not just great music as well.
Right. Now, I don't think there's any question that you guys do it right, because, as someone who manages bands, obviously I get bands asking me all the time, how did you get into Boatyard? How do you stay at Boatyard? How did you get to Clint? How did you get to Chris? Right. And I'm very well aware of not handing the keys, to access to you guys, because I know you get hammered on a daily basis. But Clint, I think you're spot on. I think having a good product on and off the stage is really critical. And if bands haven't invested in good social media, haven't had some good band shots, don't have some non-cell phone video, right?
Well,
They're just like every other, and I joke about this, two guys in a pickle bucket. You could have great local artists all over the place, but they're never going to, play a spot bigger than, a 10 by 10 stage. So
Right.
I appreciate you saying that, because that's going to be part of what I'm going to be talking to the bands about when they're sitting in your seats, to make them understand what it takes, not just to get to Boatyard, but any of the other, competitors you have in the space that have a stage and lighting and their own sound systems, right? You can't just show up and do it the way you always did it. You got to step up to the plate when you play the better venues.
The stage at
Yeah.
Boatyard is just like with the Comedy Zone and the business of in comedy. To get on the stage, you have to be special. And Clint is the master at saying, you're special, you can do it. And so I stick behind him 100%. I drive him crazy on certain bookings and so forth, but 99% of the time, it's not even a question. If he wants to book a band, we go after it, right? Because he knows he has the eye for it.
And Colin, there's a lot of shows. I'd say 80% of our bands are from out of state, to be quite honest. And if I actually sat down with a bunch of local bands and had like a little town meeting with them, I would try to have the conversation about how to groom and grow their band, not only with their marketing, but with the shows that they're playing, picking the right locations to play, spreading their shows out, marketing their shows really hard, and building their demographic, building their fan base. No different than Blue Monday did many, many years ago. No different than Unknown Artists, who's like the newer kid in the block have the last 3 or 4 years. A perfect example of a band that's kind of dialed back on all the local shows and picked better shows and smarter shows and have groomed themselves and done great with their marketing and now turned themselves into a 700 person band when they play Boatyard. I mean, a lot of the bands, Chris is right. I bring bands from San Diego, Austin, Texas, New York, Florida. A lot of bands I source all over the United States because I try to find the best. But also with that comes a price point too to buy the best talent. And that's why you see certain cover charges are where they are, because we're not paying bands $100 to fly in from San Diego and then have, all the expenses that a venue like us has. So I have to be very smart about my talent buying. I have to mix it up. I tell Chris all the time, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. I can't do country, and 80s, 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 80s every other weekend. I got to dip in and out of different ticket prices. I got to try to put a rock band with a country band one weekend. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. And it's extremely time consuming. I know artists probably get frustrated, like, he's not getting back to us. But I also have a real job where I book, I'm looking at on my desk right now about 75 different shows I'm working on nationally. And I primarily book national acts, so I have massive events coming up that I have to be, prepared for. So Boatyard is really important to me, as is to Chris, but we also have other businesses and things we need to focus on. So I do the best I can to help the bands out. I try to explain to them why they aren't playing there if they want to play there, and I try to give them examples of what they should do to play there.
And I think that that's important that they understand that. And it's not personal, right? It's a business.
Yeah.
Like you said, everyone's in it to make money. The band's in it to make money. You guys are in it to make money. And I think that's the one thing that a lot of bands that are up and coming don't really understand, the business aspect of it. They want to play everywhere, every night. They'll play for free. They'll play for beer money. They just want to play, right? But then they get to a point where they go, well, how am I going to make that jump to a venue that has tickets? Well, you're probably going to look at how many followers they have or how, good the show is. And if you've been used to doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results. So I think that's important. And obviously a great reason why I wanted to have you guys on first is you guys have set the bar so high for a lot of the other music venues in the area that if every band could raise themselves, I would like you to say one day, there's too many good bands. I have a hard time picking locally. Wouldn't that be a great thing to happen? Like I have so many great bands within, 100 miles of here that it's really hard to put a schedule together.
Yeah, Lake Norman has a real good potential to be a cool music scene as well. And they could start with Boatyard. You get a lot of the restaurants and bars and breweries, they do live music and they dabble with it and they do well with it. But Boatyard being the flagship, we want to be part of the community. We'll support and help and be part of the bigger picture. And I think we have a great foundation to do that. I mean, it's a cool vibe. I mean, it's a cool place to come to, not just Boatyard, the whole lake community.
All right. Chris, have you ever brought a band to Clint that he didn't pick?
Yep, absolutely. Great.
Holy proof. I have many times.
And there won't be a board.
Hold on. Has he booked them? No.
It's okay. Could be hard. The boss comes to you and says, I want you to play this band. And you know that they're not really ready. That's got to be a conversation.
I do a ton of charitable stuff. So I love the charity events. And so Clint appeases me in many ways through those events.
It's funny because I joke with Chris because, I'm the shot caller on that stage, but Chris is the shot caller of everything outside the stage. but he's got the biggest nightmare of all compared to what I have to do.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, but it's all for the common good, right?
Yeah.
I love it you did that. And I steal that quote, every week that I'm talking about, my 3 picks. I always say support live music. So I don't know if I need to pay you a copyright fee on that, but that's certainly something that a lot of folks in the area agree with, right? And I know you see the same folks over and over, but I would like to say, from my perspective, and you guys are there obviously a whole lot more than I am, I would like to say that the demographics have changed a good bit over the last 9 months to a year, where it used to be the older 40 plus crowd that have been here a while. Now I'm starting to see a good bit of 20-year-olds. What do you guys say to that?
Agree. A toast to Brian and Eric from the Rudder, because when we first opened Boatyard, God bless the Rudder crowd, because those guys are still getting after it and they're still having the best time. But, to take away from what you just said, Clint has done a great job at mixing up the bands that are hitting that stage. And by mixing up the bands, the genres, mixing up the locations where they're from, has opened up a whole new audience for us. We have a great partnership with the Hampton Inn right down the road from Boatyard, and that hotel gets quite a few reservations every weekend, every show, from different people coming into town that want to spend the weekend and leave. So that's really a cool thing, because again, they're going to the restaurants, they're filling up the lake, they're supporting Boatyard, and kind of a win-win, I think, for everybody.
I got to agree with Chris. I got to give a big shout out to the Rudder, because I used to go there back in the day, as you did. And I feel like, knowing what I've been doing in my industry for 35 years, booking concerts and stuff like that, I go like, oh my God, it's the same 4 bands playing every other week. We'll see them. Please let me take this over. And then, then all of a sudden I got, Grumbling Mayor, hey, this place is opening up, down by JV Watson Elementary School. And that's how it started. I was so excited to be involved in the music scene here. And I'd gone to Chris about actually trying to do some festivals out front of the Galway Hooker outside of St. Patrick's Day. There's so many moving parts with the town and stuff like that. And then this was not something that happened over a month or 2 months or a year or two.
No.
You're right, Colin. I had to focus on, my wheelhouse was 80s music when we first opened up, and that demographic that left the Rudder looking for a place to go. And then bringing Chris in and then moving, migrating on from that to try to bring in newer, younger talent has been my sole goal the last, maybe 18 months or so. And I have to give it to Chris. I mean, the one thing that COVID really caught us off guard with is we were expecting to come out big with the talent and the shows and people showing up. What we weren't expecting was the situation we were having with people wanting to work after COVID. And that's common knowledge across, the entire country. It wasn't just, Boatyard, or it was a real struggle, I think. And Chris could probably speak a lot more on that, because that was the disappointing part, because we were so excited to come out, throttle down, be wide open. And all of a sudden we run into like the staffing issues and things like that. I'll let Chris take it from here.
100%. $1,500 checks from the government will keep a lot of people at home. But again, neither here nor there on the staffing, because when we did get our legs underneath us, and it only took a couple of months at Boatyard, the scary thing is, I don't think we've replaced a single staff member outside of people migrating on their own free will. No one's quitting. No one's getting fired. It's a family over there. And if you come to Boatyard, you see it from the kids that are running the back of the kitchen, running the food running. They're young high school kids having the best time, because it really is a really cool job. To the bartenders there that are just serving up every libation this town that could need. And we've been very blessed. I've talked to a ton of my restaurant friends, ton of bar friends. They struggle weekly on being able to keep a staff. And for Boatyard to be able to have what it has for as long as it has, knocking on wood, we're very lucky.
Right. And kudos to Matt, your general manager, who, not sure why he chose not to join us tonight, but he's obviously an integral part of the business every day, every week. So cheers to Matt for making that happen as well. We're about at time, and I'm only halfway through my question, so we're absolutely going to have to do this again.
You get one more question.
You do speed questions.
You can get one more question. One more question, Colin. What's it going to be?
One more question. Where do you see Boatyard in 5 years, both of you?
Chris first.
I see Boatyard in 5 years being an evolution of what it is now to the community. I see the property, because we all know where the location is. It is literally the entrance into Cornelius. And Boatyard will be a staple on that corner for a very, very long time to come. But in 5 years from now, I see the music scene being elevated 10x in this community, but I see Boatyard playing at a higher level as well. Clint is already toying right now with national acts, starting to look at what we can do. We're never going to be the national venue every weekend, but starting to bring national acts in maybe on a quarterly basis, dabble with that within the market, but continuing to cultivate these smaller bands, regional, local, and helping them expand. Because once they get great momentum at Boatyard, Clint's the perfect person to help them go more regional, more national, because he has the vehicle to do that. So I'd love to see Boatyard as a venue to the community, as an incubator to these bands, and as a house for a lot of these bigger bands that want to come play there. We've had major national acts that have graced that stage. Huge acts, but they've come through special events, through corporations, through some of our NASCAR parties. We could blow you away with some of the acts that have hit that stage. But for the general public, Boatyard's going to grow into that, but we will get there.
That was a drop the mic moment. He's nailed it. I feel the same way. I will always push Chris on national talent. That's going to be like, well, is to continue to grow the venue with the artists we're bringing in and push, throttle down on bringing some national acts in.
He is in a desperate search for Debbie Gibson at this moment.
Debbie, if you're out there, call us. Well, I don't know if I'll make that show, but that sounds like a good one. Anyway, gentlemen, it's an honor and a privilege. You guys are awesome. Thank you for helping me break in on this whole thing. Hope you guys had some fun, and I certainly hope we will do it again. And we will see you guys at the next show.
Colin.